Alright, so 11 days ago, on February 3rd, a train derailment occurred in the town of Palestine, Ohio, which saw a lot of toxic chemicals being released into the environment, including the big one they're talking about is vinyl chloride, which is a carcinogen, right? And people are talking about how this is a failure on many people's parts. Many people are playing the blame game, right? A lot of people on the right are using this as an opportunity to attack Biden and the Democrats, as they always do, right? They're saying like, oh, Biden and his administration is dropping the ball on this. They're covering up things, which certainly is happening. But I think, they're missing the bigger picture, right? Because the Trump administration also, got rid of some rules and regulations about how to treat these toxic chemicals, how to classify them, and how to, handle them properly, and rules about upgrading the train safety systems on the on the trains that are carrying them, right? And it seems like both parties are at fault for this to varying degrees, right? But this kind of disaster and the media cover up to the extent that it is happening, because there have been plenty of stories talking about it, but it many have been saying it's not getting the coverage that it should be getting, right? And there was that one reporter that was arrested. Allegedly, he was trespassing, so maybe they're not really trying to cover up the story. The reporter was at like a press briefing, so it's not like they're not doing any press briefings at all, right? But it is very weird. I mean, of course cops make up reasons to arrest people all the time, right? But the criticism that the Biden administration or any like large public official has not come out and made any kind of speech about this, called for any kind of action for it, is kind of sus, and I think it is legitimate to criticize, like, for example, Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, not even like they're just pretending that it doesn't exist, right? And there have been cleanup efforts, and it's been okay, right? But it is very telling, like where people's priorities are at, right? Like like the government, of course, no matter who's in charge, it seems like interested in just like protecting its public image and like not making people worry about things, right? And I think like the public has been warned about like the presence of toxic chemicals in the air, and I guess it's still a little early to say like exactly how bad it is. Some are saying that it's a mini Chernobyl, right? It's like America's Chernobyl in the 21st century, which I think is like kind of playing it up a little bit, right? I think you know this is a chemical spill, and it's a very big chemical spill, and it is serious, and it is already having serious effects. But to compare it to Chernobyl is kind of weird. Like it's really just like showing that image of the big plume of smoke that looks sort of like a mushroom cloud from them burning off the toxic chemicals. Of course, like Chernobyl was a nuclear event, and nuclear particles were spread all across Europe from that one event. And it's all this event has already killed like a lot of wildlife. It's having bad health effects on all sorts of like farm animals as well, domesticated animals, pets, and of course the people, right? Vinyl chloride is a carcinogen, and it can cause all sorts of different kinds of cancers, right? So the thing about cancer is that like it takes a while to develop, so or a while to show symptoms. So it's one of those problems where you can just sort of kick the can down the road, saying like, oh, it's not a big deal right now, so like we don't have to worry about it. But it it is a big deal, and the chemicals have gotten into the Ohio River. It's going to spread. It's already killing like a lot of fish. It's going to they say it's going to spread to the Mississippi River possibly, and they say like, oh, um they're tracking the chemical plume that's moving down the river, and the cities can just shut off water supply or get water from elsewhere while it's happening, and they can just like filter out all the toxic chemicals, whatever is remaining, right? But I think it might be like a lot more complicated than that, right? I guess time will tell to see like just how much these chemicals are affecting people's lives, and of course like some of it may be unseen, it might be invisible, like a lot of these chemicals literally are like colorless, odorless gases, so a lot of problems can occur without it being directly linked to it, right? And of course the fire. Let's see if we can find some pictures of it. Here it is. Just saw in the middle of the country a giant.
Saw in the middle of the country
a
giant.
Yeah, this looks. This is not good. This is not the sign of like a successful country right here. This is not things going well. So apparently, they set it on fire on purpose so they can burn off the chemicals. I guess like releasing all of this stuff into the air is
chemical fireball 100
is not as harmful. Okay, so I've heard different stories, like the train derailed, which caused a fire. This looks like this is right after the train derailed, right?
Foot flames, and very few people asking questions about what led up to this. So there was a derailment in 2012 in New Jersey, releasing.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people saying that this is the result of the antiquated train braking systems that they still use. It's the same kind of braking system that they've been using since the Civil War, right? The American Civil War, that's right. Of course, America's infrastructure is in very poor shape, and this is another example of like both parties are kind of responsible for this, because like to be fair, we did pass infrastructure funding under Biden. That was one of the first big things that he did, but like it shouldn't have taken that long, right? Infrastructure spending is like unequivocally a good thing, right? It increases revenue, it increases like commerce and travel, and it's just a good thing. Having roads and bridges and most importantly railways in this case that are just not falling apart and not constantly like causing accidents. You know, it's a nice thing to have, but like infrastructure should be popular, but like Obama never passed infrastructure, or Trump. I think Trump talked about it. Of course, Trump talked about a lot of things. Trump talked about doing a lot of things, but he never did a lot of things. But let's see.
20,000 gallons of dangerous chemicals and noxious gas into the air.
20,000 gallons.
In the town are being affected by this.
And there was pressure on regulators to do something about those kinds of trains. And so the Obama administration had a rule proposed to better regulate these trains.
Yeah, so this happened in 2012. And just like a lot of problems in America, like we just kick the can down the road. We just we just never learn our lessons, right? We just like to. America just loves pretending that everything is okay, and just, you know, yeah, just don't worry about it. We don't have to like increase funding or anything. We don't have to fix anything, because like fixing anything requires work, right?
The National Transportation Safety Board told the regulatory agency, said, listen, these regulations should broadly cover not just oil, they should cover what's known as Class 2 chemicals. And the chemical industry went to work pressuring the regulatory agency to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable.
Limit the definition. What are chemical industry lobbyists doing, influencing? Influencing. Why are chemical industry lobbyists even a thing? Well, I mean, of course, lobbying in general shouldn't be a thing, but like, why are you letting chemical industry lobbyists set rules? Yeah, why do you think chemical industry lobbyists are trying to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable train is? Right? And how is vinyl chloride not a flammable substance with high hazard. Not only is it a carcinogen, apparently it has a boiling point of about 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So, which means, once it is exposed to air, it's going to start boiling, and it's highly reactive, and it can easily set on fire or even explode. There's like a something called a vapor explosion that people were afraid of, and I think that's why they did the controlled burn of the that we saw that created all the scary pictures. Here it is. This is the shot that everyone is like freaking out about. It literally looks like a mushroom cloud, doesn't it? Yeah. Apparently they're still releasing toxic chemicals into the air by doing this, but like, I guess it's less toxic than vinyl chloride, right? Yeah, they're releasing hydrogen chloride and phosphine into the air, which I guess is less worse than having vinyl chloride. I wouldn't know. I guess, apparently, yeah, these chemicals are not carcinogens in the same way that vinyl chloride is. But yeah, phosphine is a highly toxic colorless gas with a strong odor that causes vomiting and breathing trouble. Was used as a chemical weapon in World War One. So we have chemical weapons just like floating around it. But let's finish this video.
Agency to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable train is. Limit it in a way that the train in Ohio, that kind of train ended up not being classified as a high hazard flammable train.
The NTSB closely monitoring 4 cars that are filled with vinyl chloride. It has been found to be linked to cancer.
Trains that were subject to this rule were going to be required to use a special kind of new braking system to try to deter or at least reduce the damage from derailments.
ECP delivers the unmatched performance of air brakes with the precision of electronic communications.
Most trains in the country are still using technology from the
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
The moment the government was considering making it a mandate, the railroad industry's changed its tune.
They're carrying and spilling a record amount of oil. Yeah, so upgrading to electronic brakes is, you know, a pretty basic thing, I'd say. Like, apparently it does cost a lot. It costs like, I heard that it costs like $3 billion to upgrade like all of the trains and all of the braking systems, which is a lot of money, but you know, it's worth it, right? So the way the braking systems work now is that like, well, first of all, like, the braking system is like antiquated, and the engineer has to like, you know, brake like one car at a time, apparently. And these trains are very understaffed. Apparently there are only like 2 people on the train, like a driver or a pilot, and then one engineer somewhere on the train. So ideally, like, if you have a train, you would have like multiple brakemen in each of the cars, so that you can actually brake the train all at once if you don't have an electronic braking system. If you're going to have only one person in the cockpit of the train, you would think that you would want to have that person be able to brake the entire train all at once, right? But that's just not possible. What happened is that, well, part of the train, but yeah, this is just an example of like corporate power just like cutting any corner that they can to like increase their profit margin by just a little bit, right? Again, this is like the corporate drive to pursue short-term gains to satisfy their shareholders over like long-term sustainability, right? Because you're just myopically focused on like meeting your quarterly revenue projections instead of like what is good like over long periods of time, like years or even decades, right?
Brakes with the precision of electronic communications.
most trains in the country are still using technology from the Civil War era. But the
Yeah, so I think those kinds of brakes are like mechanical brakes, right? Which you would have to brake like one car at a time, which is like very inefficient.
moment the government was considering making it a mandate, the railroad industry's changed its tune. It cited cost concerns to pressure against that.
Cost concerns, as in like they're trying to like cut whatever corners that they can to pursue their profits, to just to satisfy their shareholders. That this is like a broader issue of like, you know, capitalists trying to like meet their quarterly earnings projections and pursue short-term profits over or at the cost of long-term sustainability, right? Because if you're a shareholder of this company, you know, of Norfolk Southern, I think it's is the company that owns this, you don't want to hear as a shareholder that you know, the company is spending like $3 billion upgrading its train so that it will be safer. They don't care. They want a piece of that $3 billion, right? Yeah, cost concerns and pressure. Yeah, ironically, like, the long-term sustainability thing is pretty important because, like, in the long term, it is more profitable to upgrade your trains and have, like, higher quality trains in general, higher quality, like, rail systems, right? Because I think, like, part of the problem here might have been, like, the rails themselves were out of shape, right? It's easy to have a derailment when the rails are all bent and dented and just bent out of shape, right?
We want to see federal regulations when they're necessary, not just in reaction to a headline in the Washington Post.
When they're necessary. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. The problem with this is like, the problem with, like, in this case, waiting for something bad to happen to have a reaction to it is like, it's unacceptable to have it happen even once, right? And again, like, these regulations that are being talked about, like, at least they tried, right? Or these federal regulations, I mean, they happened after a derailment happened in 2012, right? And so, like, it is in response to one event, and it's like, one event should be enough. One massive, like, derailment event should be enough to, like, upgrade things to make sure it doesn't happen again, but no, can't do that. And, like, at least the Obama administration tried, right? At least the administration acknowledged that there was a problem and tried to change things, right? But of course, yeah, they were pressured out of it by lobbyists. How do you get pressured by chemical industry lobbyists? Like, what sort of pressure can they even apply? Like, oh, we're going to withhold funding from you if you make us spend a little bit more money to be safer? We're not going to, like, fund your campaign anymore or something?
Included that measure to expand the larger use of those brakes on the nation's rail system. But in the 2016 election year, the Republican Party got about $6 million from the rail industry. And Senate Republicans started beating the drum for Trump to repeal the rule. Donald Trump repealed the brake rule so that the industry does not have to even start to use these kinds of brakes. One former federal railroad.
Okay, so they literally just bribed politicians. They're like, here's $6 million. I guess it's in the form of campaign contributions or something, right? But, you know, 6 million is 6 million. Doesn't matter, like, what they say it's for, right? They're like, oh, if we give them $6 million now, we won't have to spend $3 billion, like, providing a better service for people, right? Or yeah, being safer about things. Again, yeah. Like, at least like Obama tried, right? That's the nicest thing you can say about Obama, is that at least he tried. His heart was in the right place, right? Apparently he did actually, like, try to put in place a rule, right?
Obama's rule included that.
Okay, so he did
measure
pass
to
a rule,
expand the larger use
but,
of those brakes on the nation's rail system. But in that 2016 election year, the Republican Party got about $6 million from the rail industry. And Senate
Plus
Republicans
dollars.
started beating the drum for Trump to repeal the rule. Donald Trump repealed the brake rule so that
Repealed
the industry
the
does
brake
not have
rule.
to even
It's the
start
bad
to
rule.
use these kinds of brakes.
They
One
don't need to
former
spend.
railroad
Yeah, these woke brakes. they're trying to. Obama's trying to make our trains woke. We don't need these woke braking systems. We've been using the same systems for 150 years because they're the best. Okay, we don't need any of these fancy woke brakes. The brakes we got were just fine. Believe me. My friend, he's very nice. He owns the trains. My friend who owns the trains, he said to me, he sent me Trump. He sent me Donald, buddy. These woke politicians are trying to make us spend a bunch of money. We don't have to. I said that sounds nonsense. That sounds like nonsense. We gotta do something about that.
Administration regulators told us that these brakes, which are known as ECP brakes, would have mitigated a disaster like this. And we just learned today, after the publication of our story, federal officials
Rail companies blocked safety rules before Ohio
told
derailment.
us that this train did not have those brakes on the train.
Clearly. Yeah, so I saw a video of the train braking and it like sparks were flying. Apparently the train was braking for a long time. Like the train was kept braking for several miles while it was still moving. It was trying to stop, right? And eventually it hit a snag in the rails or something. And then one of the train cars derailed, which caused the next cars to be derailed, and then this whole clusterfuck happens, right? With the train cars behind or at the back moving faster than the ones in front that were actually braking, right? So not only did the crumple effect happen, but like if they had better braking systems, they could have braked much faster and much sooner, which would have prevented this. And it seems like a very basic thing, right? Like the Europeans and like the Asians, they're laughing at us, right? They got the fanciest trains, they got the best, the biggest, the best trains you've ever seen, believe me. And shit like this just does not happen in civilized countries, in you know, states that are not shithole countries, right? The disaster in East Palestine, Ohio is the result of years of deregulation and anti-labor practices. We are here because the rail industry invested in stock buybacks instead of safety and their own workers. Making a mistake, this will happen again unless we take action now. Of course, yeah. America is notoriously bad at actually taking action, right? This is Ohio's Chernobyl, they say, which is funny because I would say Ohio is already a Chernobyl level event, right? Like Ohio is America's Chernobyl, right? Because Ohio sucks. I'm just kidding. Ohio's fine, I'm sure. Ohio's okay. It's kind of mid, but like it's not that bad, right? Yeah, this is happening like just a few months after the whole rail strike was attempted. At least the rail strike was broken, right? It's one of the few instances where like Congress had to step in and stop a strike from happening, which is very weird. Like Congress usually doesn't do that, right? But apparently Congress has special rights to regulate this sort of thing, like transportation or train strike, because it's such a crucial industry, right? The answer to that is like, if it's such an important industry, then just pay the workers well. Or the problem actually wasn't that wasn't the pay, it was more like the hours that they were working. It was the scheduling issues, because like, you know, trains often run for many hours, possibly like over a day, and the train has to be staffed the whole time, right? And a lot of train workers can't see their families. They are overworked, they're exhausted, and of course the train companies are cutting back on workers, right? like a lot of companies now are cutting back on workers, but they are not cutting back the workload in accordance with that, right? Like there's still the same amount of work to be done, but less people to do the work, so all the work just gets put on to whoever's left. The result is that like the remaining workers are worked even harder, right? So the trains are overworked and understaffed, right? Like even if there were only 2 people on this train and they had to manually brake each car, theoretically, if they weren't so exhausted, maybe they could have braked the trains faster, right? You either can have a bunch of exhausted people all braking the train, or you can have like a few well-oiled workers braking as fast as they can. But no, we can't have either of that, right? This guy really say shit happens. People make mistakes sometimes when you ship enough chemicals around via rail for years. This just happens eventually. Shit happens, really. Also via rail, as if like trucks don't crash all the time. There are always like reports of like truck spills all the time, right? So yeah, apparently Ro Khanna did vote to end the labor strike, which, not a good look, sweetie. Anti-labor practices like busting up the rail workers strike, yeah, like that, you mean? Again, like, I don't get it. If rail is such an important industry, then why can't you just properly treat the workers, or at least like don't have it understaffed, right? Theoretically, yeah, you could have like plenty of workers working like 16 or 20-hour shifts or whatever, but if you have enough of them, they can still get the job done, maybe, right? But no, we can't have either of those things, right? So yeah, there has sort of been a media blackout here, right? And now, like, it seems like people are talking about it now because, like, they couldn't keep it quiet, right? Because it's such a big story. They didn't want to talk about it because it made, like, people look bad. Not only just, like, politicians, but, like, our whole, like, economic system, right? That encourages this kind of, like, the behavior that leads to these disasters, right? More than a third of the national TV coverage of the derailment happened yesterday, 10 days after it happened. That's yesterday on February the 14th. Yeah, and only 2 programs in the last 10 days of national TV coverage of the Ohio train disaster mentioned how Norfolk lobbyists helped weaken regulations for trains carrying toxic materials. Yeah, like, how are you gonna like not classify certain materials as toxic because like you want to cut corners? Like, how do you do that with, there's like, you got to be some kind of, like, I don't know, there's no way you can do that with a good conscience. I guess these people don't care about consciences, they just care about like profits, right? Norfolk Southern is a perfect example of rail companies' misplaced priorities. In 2022 gave $4.7 billion to wealthy shareholders, but now just $1 million to East Palestine residents. Yeah, last I heard, they were offering just $25,000 to Palestine, but now it's up to $1 million. At least that's an improvement, right? Because apparently, East Palestine peoples have to buy their own water supplies now. They're saying like, yeah, just buy your own bottled water. Officials tell Ohio Town. So that $25K apparently would be enough to buy like 2 bottles of water for each resident of Palestine. So they're saying like, yeah, it might not be a big deal. It might be, but just to be safe, just drink bottled water for now, and don't drink any tap water because like it could be contaminated. Of course, they don't know, right? So like, at least they are. At least they're listening, or at least they're offering more money now. I mean, of course, it's still not enough. Primary culprit is precision scheduled railroading, management philosophy that swept through the industry, prioritizes short-term profits that are generated by shipping heavier and longer loads with less. Oh yeah, I've read about this during the whole, rail strike that happened, or the attempted rail strike that happened, when we were covering like all the issues that were associated with the rail industry. Like, it's like they're cutting every corner that they can, trying to like maximize profit and maximize efficiency at the cost of safety. Yeah, they're shipping heavier and longer loads with less labor. Yeah, it means they're strapping more cars onto one train, and heavier loads as well. Did we see like trains that were like double stacked over here?
Election years, the Republic got a fix. The rail use of
yeah, look at this. Like these got like 2 cargo containers stacked on top of each other. Like, I don't think this should be like standard practices. I mean, it's efficient, sure, but like, okay, you got to choose between like double stacking the cars and like having longer trains. I think like ideally you would double stack the cars, because having longer trains, apparently like the trains can't pass each other if they're too long, because they have like they have spare tracks built to like allow trains to like, sidestep a train and like wait for the train to pass. But like if a train is too long, it can't fit on that strip of rail, because I guess they can't build enough rail to accommodate that, because that would be too much work, right? That would be extra cost, and they can't do that. I guess like when they built the rail, they didn't think trains would need to be this long, right? So ideally, like, you wouldn't have trains that are too long, right? But again, like, yeah, they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to double stack the cars, but also have like twice as many cars, right? So railroad companies are pawns of Wall Street, like many big companies. Exactly. So, in conclusion, yeah, this is a fault of this is like just a symptom of the bigger political and economic issues at play here, which is like capitalists trying to maximize profit at the short-term profit at the cost of everything else. And then of course we have dumbass like conservatives like this guy like using this as an excuse to attack Biden, the Biden regime, they call it. What is a regime? Is a regime just a government that you don't like now? Of course, Stu Peters apparently is a very conservative guy. Antifa payback. Yeah, they can't have any like critical thinking about it, or like analyze things from like a wider lens. So yeah.